I've got the camera set up kind of over my shoulder so you can see what's going on under the presser foot. And as you can see here, I have my first row of puffing pinned to my bodice, and I'm stitching it along the edge. I'm using a zigzag stitch set at 1.0 width and 1.5 length, and I'm using ecru 80 weight thread in the top that matches this fabric and blue thread in the bobbin that matches this fabric, and I'm sewing through all the layers. So I've just got my regular foot and I'm following along. I can keep out of your way, and I have a skewer, a little wooden stick like that you do shish kebabs, and I'm going to be sewing. This kind of just helps me go along. Let me remove some of these pins. It's like a third finger that kind of helps guide the little ruffles and puffs underneath there. And I'm going to be stitching right on top of that stitching line, the gathering stitching line. And as you can see, I'm just lining that stitching line up right there in the center of my foot and sewing over the needles because I'm not paying attention. Alright, and I'm just going to keep going. Hopefully you can see this. Then I'm stitching and I'm stitching right down the center, and we're just setting that in. You gotta stop every once in a while. Look at all these needles. Have you ever seen so many needles? You're going to need several packs of glass head pins. I don't mean to say needles, I mean to say pins. Once I pinned this on and got it nice and flat, I just pressed a light iron on top of it just to kind of set the puffing. I haven't added my next strip yet. I'm gonna tell you how to do that, but I did kind of run out. This was a 44-inch strip, and it'll only go so far, so you'll have to add another strip. But I find it very, very difficult to manage. As you can see, I'm sewing over these pins quite well. I find it very difficult to sew a bunch of these strips together and then gather along the edge of a big, long 80-inch piece. It's just too much to handle. It twists up, gets in your way. I'm just going to do this. You know, you could do that if you were working with cotton batiste or something more manageable, but with this chiffon, it's a little bit less easy to handle. So I'm going to go strip by strip and then just join them at the ends and keep going. So I'll join you at the next segment when I add the next puffing strip. Just wanted you to see what we were doing at the sewing machine. Okay, we're back, and as you can see, I've got the puffing on. I've put the bodice back up on my body form Matilda, and I'm going to show you how I make this join over on the other side. So this is all stitched on right here, and this is my next strip that I'm going to work around over the shoulder and to the back. But unfortunately I would run out right here in the front, but that's okay. A strip runs out where it runs out, and you've just got to start over again. So let me get a close-up shot on that so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, what I did, let me take these pins out. The strip ended right here, and I found a good line that this is going to be my stitching line for my seam. And I'm going to stitch right through all these layers. So I drew a little line there with an air erasable marker, and with my next strip I'm going to, and I've given myself a good inch allowance there just because I'm comfortable with that. Gives me room to play. But what I'm going to do is line this next one up, and I've got my blue bobbin stitching on this side because when I flip it over I want the blue bobbin stitching to be on the bottom. So I'm going to make sure that on this side I line up that stitching line, and on this side I line up this stitching line. You have to do a little bit of a tug because you want this nice and tight across there. I'm going to go to the sewing machine and stitch across this pink line, and I'll come back and trim. I'll probably do a very, very tight zigzag stitch instead of a straight stitch. That's what I will do. A tight zigzag stitch across here so that I can trim that close to the seam, and then flip this up, and I'll start gathering it again. As you can see, I've already started, so I can move some of these gathers down. And the gathers should hide, you know, the seam should really kind of hide under some of those gathers and be unnoticeable. Now, and one important thing is, I'm only going to stitch between the stitching lines. I'm not going to stitch into the little ruffle because I want that to be loose. And let me go to the machine, work it out, and then we'll see how it looks. I'm kind of just stitching on a wing and a prayer here. I've tried this on the sample piece, and it came out pretty good on the sample piece. Let me see if I can show it to you. Well, I got to back up a little bit. Okay, right here on the sample piece, I joined an edge. Here's my seam, and then I flipped it over, and I think it's going to hide pretty well in there. So we'll give it a try. Okay, I'm back and I've finished the seam, and I want to show you how it looks. Can you find it? It's right here. It's really matched up well, and it does hide itself within the folds of the rest of the puffing. So I started the pinning again just to show you how well that blends in. Let me pull it. If I didn't have the pink marker on it, I probably wouldn't know where it was. So let me pull this out for you and show you. I'm holding the camera with one hand and doing this with the other, but show you how it looks. Let me pull it down into view here. It's hard to see this because this fabric is so light, but here is my seam. Do you see it? And you can see the pink line, and then I decided to do, instead of a zigzag stitch, a very tiny 1.5 straight stitch. Then I trimmed it like 1/8 inch from the edge, and then I flipped it back and continued the gathering and pinning. And it hides itself quite well. I don't really know of another way to do it, especially since we're going to work the puffing section by section instead of seaming the ends together and then gathering it all at once and then putting it all on, which is really quite impossible with how hard it is to work with. As you can see, this is well, I don't know if you can see it or not. This puffing is really flimsy and hard to work with. So it's best to do it a section at a time and just join your seams like this. And if I'm brave enough to put a seam on the front of this dress, then it works out pretty good. I mean, anybody that's going to notice that seam, which you can hardly see even when you're looking at it close up, is just too close to your daughter or to you. So I'm going to finish doing the puffing around the top. We're going to add the ribbon across this top edge here later, and I'll come back.